storing some of the carbon dioxide emissions from the combustion. However, this technology is still costly and unproven. The agreement signals the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era, but it also shows that there is still a long way to go to achieve a net zero emissions world by 2050, as required by science to limit global warming to that number, which we call 1.5 degrees Celsius. The other point on this just transition was transitioning away from fossil fuels in the absence of clear country targets. And this is actually where the North and South were differing. This is bound by quantum that can be monitored in specific timelines, is but just another wish list. So it's we can talk about many things, but without metrics, without that quantum, then it becomes very difficult. This opens the negotiation to another protracted battle of matrices of transitioning and brings to the just transition. So we have just transition, and with just transition, we don't know where it is taking us. It is actually whether it is diversionary, but really the meaning of just transition has not been very well articulated, and what it means and what it carries. The other point is a major disappointment and an affront to climate justice is the failure of COP28 to secure new financial commitments for transitioning away from fossil fuels and adapting to climate impact. So this was more an aspiration than action, because we can talk out in an agreement, but at the end of the day, without means of implementation, that is money, it just amounts to nothing. So we go to adaptation, which is very critical for Africa. Or the African position is adaptation, and adaptation is really the embodiment of Africa. So on adaptation, we notice lack of a tangible outcome on what we are calling global goal on adaptation. 2, COP28 ended without securing strong commitments to more than double adaptation finance flows to Africa, yet adaptation remains the single most important priority for Africa, owing to the disproportionate levels of vulnerabilities and adverse impacts on its populations and economies. 3, progressive commitments under UAE, the host of the COP, to secure some goals related to water, health, resilience, food, and agriculture by 2030. How this again will be arrived. And actually, this was not a COP decision. This was a meeting agreement outside the COP. The push for an aspirational global goal on adaptation cannot be rationalized with a push for voluntary implementation of this goal, particularly with the national level leadership and without a strong commitment to global climate finance. The other point is the means of implementation is supposed to be a key element of the global goal on adaptation. And when we talk about the means of implementation, we are talking about money, technology, and the capacity building. But this was not clearly factored in the framework. The current text then does not bring this out at all. So there was also for the first time inclusion and the discussion of the sidelines of the COP about issues of climate and health. And health has been the case with the mitigation-centric response to climate change in Africa, portends another platform for siphoning the much needed climate finance, but profiteering well-connected pharmaceutical multinationals in rich countries. So they have seen an opportunity because climate change has money and they want a pie for themselves. But we are saying we need to take more money for adaptation to help communities which are suffering from climate change, on health, particularly on health sector, to get this money. As an imperative of climate justice for us, once we read the reality of climate change and health should be seek to strengthen people-centered response and address the climate change impacts on primary drivers of health, the fundamentals related to access to water, sanitation, healthy and nutritious food, among other primary elements. So this discussion could capture these elements, but unfortunately, it is not doing so. it is talking about things. Going to climate finance, developed countries must fulfill their climate finance commitments. Unfortunately, COP28 has not yet taken any significant action towards the financial goal. Two, current demands for climate finance are in trillions of dollars, and previous projection of $100 billion annually should be recalibrated and should go upwards. This number was arrived in 2009. You remember, for those who went to COP20, COP15. But there was no metrics, there was no measurement. It is political leaders led by former President Obama of the US, called all leaders in a small room and came up with this magical number. It has remained controversial, and now 10 years, almost 10 years later, 2009 up to now, there is nothing we are seeing out of it. So it needs to be revised, it needs to be reworked, and we need to see how this works in practice. While significant mobilization of public and private finance is crucial, the importance of addressing the indebtedness of African developing countries, and reforming international financial architecture must be accorded pragmatic steps beyond rhetoric. That is very, very difficult. The President of Kenya has been nominated and appointed by the African Union as the champion to this discourse on reforming international financial architecture, and he happens to be very passionate about climate action. And so, how do we use such opportunities? You remember, he came to PAC the other last year, and he raised the PAC conference. So we can, as parliamentarians, engage him to advance some of the decisions which we made. And remember, there was a very strong declaration which was made at PAC about climate finance, which we need to follow up. And hopefully, parliamentarians at PAC went back with that declaration to adopt it in their parliaments, because this is the beginning. And some of the things which were raised there, you can see them in this in this presentation, and what we secured in COP28. So we also welcome the pledges and the commitments to climate finance, to the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, Least Developed Countries Fund, and the special funds, noting with concern that these commitments fall far short of the expected scale of climate finance. We need billions. These funds are more or less empty. Industrialized countries have refused to put money into them, and they have been shifting the goalpost. So they also caution against the promotion of carbon markets, both substantial for climate finance and the mitigation action, as captured as the pillar on delivering high integrity carbon markets of the UAE leaders' declaration on a global climate finance framework. And there was the issue of loss and damage. Many celebrated it, because as we saw it as a trick, this was the first agenda, the first item which was agreed, and there were a lot of pledges. But as a civil society, we refused to celebrate, because this was not the main issue, though it was important, because this loss and damage was agreed. The fund was agreed in Sharm el-Sheikh. So the COP was just to operationalize, but the way it was done was to entice poor countries to rush for that money and forget the bigger picture. But the success of this fund will largely depend on operational modalities, access modalities, financial instruments, and funding structures that are to be developed and approved by the board. And you know, the board right now, it has controversially went against the decision of a very scientific committee which sat and said the Santiago network, which is going to be building capacity for countries, selected a team was selected to ensure that there is a secretariat for that. A number of countries and locations were selected. And there were two developing countries locations which were selected. Addis Ababa and Ethiopia and Nairobi in Kenya. And the Nairobi marked on top. Others were Bonn, Germany, and the other one was Geneva. I can assure you we were very disappointed because Geneva came number 3, but they picked Geneva away from what. So that is injustices which we are talking about. We are not being explained why, but we were told actually money laid hands. Those guys, the board was bribed by Switzerland, and then they were told put in very good hotels, and that was the end of the story. But I don't want to go into those politics now. Let us move the next in the slide. So greater participation, particularly by civil society and even parliamentarians, to ensure progressive operational modalities to the greatest extent possible must be put in place in developing these access modalities. Right now we are making noise because the access modalities are being made very hard, deliberately, so that to access that money, not even our community, the way the Green Climate Fund has happened, you cannot access. In fact, accessing the money from Green Climate Fund is more difficult than accessing World Bank money. Remember when we were proposing the Green Climate Fund in 2010, when it was operationalized, we wanted an international financial instrument which is less bureaucratic, which is more democratic, which is really accessible than the World Bank. But the opposite has happened. We are very disappointed. Is this what is going to happen with the Loss and Damage Fund? History will judge. But also developing countries must be transparent and accountable in demonstrating their contribution to the Loss and Damage Fund in line with the common but differentiated responsibilities principle and respective capabilities. This is what we are saying. But the 700 plus billion which was raised is actually million, not billion. It is as a drop in the ocean. How much money is being used in the war in Ukraine? Trillions. How much money is being used in Israel, killing innocent people, children and women? Billions. How much money is going into war entirely across the world? The other day, the U.S. Congress passed around 95 billion US dollars to support the war in Ukraine, to support Israel, and to support a country fighting in China. It is very easy. Look, the US contributed in this fund only 17 million shillings. Can you see the priority? Where people are dying, where it is important, they don't put money. But in war, they put big money. So where is the priority? Those are the questions we are asking. The other one is developed countries must desist from repackaging existing climate finance and or official development assistance in the loss and damage pledges. So these guys, they have pledged already some money for NDCs in countries, or some money in official development assistance to support SDGs. But then you go back, pick that money and call it climate finance. That is what is happening. We need to mount a campaign, and that's why working with PACJA has been really very vocal in really ensuring that we get the regain climate fund, not rebaptized and repackaged financial commitment by international countries. The success of this fund will likely depend on operational modalities. That's what I've said. Take this clarification. Subject to the application of concessional loans as a mechanism of funding losses and damage, more so for developing and vulnerable countries. So we are objecting on that, using loans, using debts, and really burdening African and other developing countries on climate debt, because our governments are now rushing because there is a lot of money that it is coming on concessional loans from World Bank and this country. So they have diverted money from now. They are not taking it to Green Climate Fund, but giving our countries this money to the now green climate, saying this is climate finance, but they are coming into threats. But because our countries need money, our government's leaders don't care. And this is really very, very dangerous. We are now plunging into debt, and you can see all what is happening in these countries really is now the biggest challenge, which now, like in Kenya, you see, it is because of these financial issues, where you can see for those who come from Kenya, they have rising by young people. This is going to happen in, I can assure you, in many countries where now the young people are very, are now very desperate, looking for jobs which are not forthcoming. I just want to just give you an example of what this means in African countries on some data which we received. Climate distressed nations which have received billions on climate loans between the 2015 and the 2020, we had Egypt, which got a loan of $52.1 billion US dollars. Kenya got 1.2. I mean, Egypt got 2.1 billion. Kenya received a loan of 1.9 billion. Sri Lanka, that's in Asia. You remember the uprising there just recently. 1.5 billion. Tunisia, 1.5 billion. Iraq, 1.5 billion. Pakistan, 897.7 million US dollars. Ecuador, 873 million. Argentina, 726. Nigeria, 707. El Salvador, 381. I'm just giving you an example how our countries are being indebted in the name of now climate change. And this should stop. The application of principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities to secure sustainable replenishment for the fund and a responsive access mechanism for communities at the front line of the climate crisis. So, I am vulnerable, I'm not as, but even those industrialized countries are saying they are vulnerable. This is unacceptable. We cannot share the same burden with them. The other one is greater accountability by board members of the fund, particularly those in the north, in the excess of collective governance for the fund to ensure it delivers to those in the front line of climate crisis. This, we called this earlier in the year. We didn't know that by April, this board is going really to use the north and the rich countries will bribe our members in the fund, in the Santiago network, in such a way that now they have been bribed to accept the headquarters of the network to go in Geneva. This is actually despicable. There's also, we had also the global stock take, looking back to the Paris Agreement, and now the assessment on where we are, and we with the end, we asked them for urgent, incremental, transformational, and country-driven adaptation, which we are still worrying about. Decision to continue and strengthen the Sharm el-Sheikh dialogue between parties, relevant organizations and stakeholders to exchange views on and enhance understanding of the scope of Article 2, Paragraph 1C of the Paris Agreement and its complementarity with Article 9 of the Paris Agreement, Part 2 in Decision 1 CMA 4 until 2025 takes notes of this decision. CMA 5 1.8N action based on different national circumstances. The other key one was the decision to convene and specify the number of 11 ministerial dialogues at its 60th session of which we have come actually from Bonn just 2 weeks ago, on the urgent need to scale up adaptation finance, which there was no decision on that. We found it very difficult, and taking into account the adaptation-related outcomes of the global stocktaking, and to ensure the mobilization by developed country parties of the adaptation support pledged. This is the crux of the matter. They don't want to hear anything about adaptation. In fact, they want to ask it over more businesses, which is really adaptation has no return on investment. That's why we say money for adaptation should come in the name of grants. The other key decision was decision to establish a technology implementation program supported by inter alia, the operating entity of the financial mechanism, to strengthen support for the implementation of the technology priorities identified by developing countries and to address the challenges identified in the first periodic assessment of the technology mechanism. So there was also, has also been an issue with the special needs and circumstances for Africa, that the process for the inclusion of agenda item on special needs and circumstances of Africa started during the final stages of the negotiations. If you remember, in COP21, when the African ministers requested the French presidency to undertake consultations on the issue of vulnerability of Africa in the aftermath of the COP. We remember COP21 was in where it was agreed in the Paris Agreement. But we said the special needs and circumstances for Africa is very important and we need it. The COP21 president responded by convening informal consultations with a view to reporting as the following COP22. The successive COP's presidents have convened informal consultations on the agenda without it making it the official COP agenda. This is the challenge we have in Africa, because this agenda has always been postponed by every COP, so it is only informal consultation. The African group of negotiators put yet another fight to have these issues included as official agenda item at COP28 in consultations under the COP28 presidency, keen to have this reflected as a principal element. A review of a number of decision texts shows the reference to special needs and circumstances. However, this reference is not a preserve for Africa in most of the texts, because the island states have said we have also special needs. LDCs have said we also have special needs. But they have forgotten to accept the reality that even these LDCs, most of them come from Africa, but also at very local level, we face these circumstances and they have to be acknowledged. We cannot just be just special. We are more special than those others. Moving forward then to COP29 and Azerbaijan, I've just drawn a roadmap which is designed to go beyond the COP29 and climate change conferences. So my advice to the members of parliament is that we are not going to be looking at only really as an event called the COP. And that's why I have always discussed with Ghana and the team to really have a program for conversation, because going to COP only will not really make you can see what I presented. If you are encountering this fast for the first time, I can assure you you shouldn't be lost, because even terminologies themselves are very difficult. So what we need to do, and this is a program which we need to grow together under ACLI, Africa Climate Legislative Initiative, and perhaps and PACJA are the drivers of this, is to have a roadmap like this, where we look at what are the other events. And everyone in Africa and across the world are looking at this now process, which is going really, because this climate change is about development, is how is it intervening, how is it intervening with other developments. So these are key events which we have been following in this process, and some of them are we just draw from the COP28. And in fact, the leaders have realized that they are not going to be just speaking the COP as an event. So they have drawn a roadmap up to not only up to COP28, but also in COP30 in Brazil, and established what they are calling the Troika. The three COP presidents are in consultation. That is the COP28 in UAE, the COP29 in consultation with Brazil, which is going to host COP30. So we need also to look into that, because we agree with this framework, because we are going to look at really this process rather than an event. Then do that up to the COP, that what are the critical moments where really building with in that build-up. It's not about only climate change conventions. It's also about the global discourse in many things which are happening. Okay? And these are the high-level political forum which is coming up next July on the SDG processes. The Summit of the Future, which is hosted, will be hosted in September by the UN Secretary General, I think 22nd, 23rd September. All these things are very important if we have to build the momentum. We have the World Social Forum, also in New York, in 2025. The Financing for Development Conference in Spain in 2025. And the IMF World Bank meetings, including the 80th birthday, because now in 2025, where we want really to reform the World Bank to respond now, instead of becoming an impoverishing institution, we want to see an institution which really supports people and countries in development. Some of the routes you are seeing in Nairobi are emanating from this World Bank, because they can capture a country and then they influence everything. And you remember, because most of you were there during the structural and adjustment program, when the World Bank forced countries, and most of them resorted into riots, like you are seeing with the young people here. So we have also, then, out of those, we'll have COP29 and COP20, that to be hosted in Berlin by the very progressive president. Also G20, remember that now Africa Union is part of G20. So what opportunity do we have to influence the global discourse? And there are other many relevant UN and global processes. At African level, we have the 37th Summit of Heads of State and Governments of the African Union, which happened in Addis Ababa in February. In fact, we had invited the PAP, but you know there were some political problems, so we were not able to be represented. We had the 11th African Regional Forum for Development in March 2024 in Addis Ababa, and the African Ministerial Conference of the Environment, which is going now to happen in Abidjan in September 2024. The Climate Change and Development in Africa Conference in the of which is going to be back to back with the African Ministerial Conference in Abidjan. And there are other national and sub-regional conversations happening all over. But also, we need also to understand that all these are happening in a very difficult context across the world, where we are still recovering from COVID-19. We are
je crois que vous avez fini, Dr.
Dr. Metika, I take it that you have completed your presentation, haven't you? Do you hear us?
I think I have only one line left here.
Peut-être qu'on a un problème de réseau.
Well, it seems that we have a network problem. Have you completed your presentation, sir?
and extreme movement in the West, shrinking human rights. You see, most likely Trump is coming back, and you know his consequences. You see the energy and the food crisis, the cost of living crisis, and the increased frequency of climate-fueled extreme disasters. This is where we are.
Je crois que vous avez une autre présentation, un autre...
Well, you've got other presentations to make, don't you?
Oh, sorry. Chair. You are hearing me?
Oui, oui, on vous entend, docteur.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
All right. So I was on the last slide, Chair. Sorry, there is a big problem with the network in Nairobi today because of some happenings which are not very good, very good. So I was talking about now in the context of the global geopolitical interactions, the climate change is not the only topical issue or the issue which is really we are grappling with. We have the COVID-19 recovery process, but also we have the Russia, Ukraine, and lately the Israeli-Hamas wars, which all the money, if we are looking for money, as I've mentioned, is going there, but also the attention and priority by industrialized countries which are supposed to provide money. But also, if you have been following the global geopolitical interactions, you have seen the rise of the extreme right and the right-wing movement in the West, which do not care about Africa. Africa is not their priority. And in fact, the aid and the development cooperation is not their priority. They are more inward looking, and they don't care about the civic space. It's about them and themselves. And the fact that this is following on the American where Trump and his right-wing movement are very handy. Remember when he was the president, he withdrew US from the Paris Agreement. So this is something which we are seeing happening, and it doesn't portend well for the climate conversations. We have the energy and the food crisis happening, the cost of living crisis, and of course increased frequency of climate-fueled extreme disasters. So thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you, Galan, again for inviting me to share my perspectives. We are always ready to work with Pan-African Parliament and this very important committee. Once again, thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mitika, for your presentation relating to keeping us abreast of what is happening in terms of the climate change issues and the avenues to be explored for further action. Well, I don't speak a word of English, so I hope that you'll be able to share through the Secretariat your presentation, which we will welcome wholeheartedly. However, and try to tell us how fossil fuels could continue being used by developing countries. Adaptation is another problem. Health and funding of health issues related to climate change, all these require funding. And other climate actions aren't that clear. The Green Fund, Adaptation Fund, and the Special Climate Change Fund. But you said that these funds, actually, their coffers are empty. However, relating to damages and losses incurred by countries, there is no clear funding to date. However, I hear that we are being offered some loans, but overall I think you are absolutely right, and we hope that this is going to be increased and is going to increase the debt levels of developing countries. Well, this is what I've been able to jot down. So are you still with us, Doctor? Hello? So we'll open the discussions so that the participants of this committee can state their cases. The floor is open.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the beautiful presentation, and also I think it's an eye-open to all of us here. But my question is that I didn't get it clear from the small countries, how did they assess the fund? Because I have seen talking of countries of war, losses and damage. What about the small countries like Eswatini? We have been.
You are breaking.
We have been.
Hello.
Hello? Hello? Yes, countries like Eswatini, a small country that is also having a challenge of climate change, like flood, loss of a lot of things, damages and that. But I didn't understand which way can we assess the funding on climate change if we can get it clear, those small countries, which way can that easily to assess the fund of climate change? That is my question, or special on the small countries. Thank you, Chairman.
Merci.
Thank you, Eswatini. Any other requests for the floor? Honorable Suleiman, sir.
Thank you, our presenter, our friend, Dr. Metika. The presentation is so disappointing. With the expectation we thought we will get from COP28, the last COP. This committee, when we had a meeting, we were optimistic that results will come out. But the report that you are telling us, there is not much that has been done towards financing climate change. And we all know that the greatest emitters are the West. And if those people are not committed to combat climate change, then who are we? Or what is the stand of Africans? So, and the other issues about the reform, global reform of global architecture. So we haven't seen a clear roadmap, you know, in the presentation that will, unless until you buttress on it. So climate financing, radical reform, you know, we are developing countries. We know how we're suffering. We know the challenges that we face. We hope, you know, the commitment, you made mention of the initial commitment. I don't know whether it was an over-ambitious commitment that they made without plans. So there is nothing that, you know, countries are doing towards meeting those financial challenges. So what is wrong for us to go back to the drawing board and try to be measurable and try to make some financial plans that are achievable? So if not, it's only a meeting of entertainment or enjoyment. At the end of the day, results would not come out. It's sad, you know, Africans, the whole world, they go to conferences, at the end of the day, they come back, nothing is seen. The country men and women are not feeling the outcomes. And these are very expensive expeditions or workshops, you might call it, or conferences. So, to me, there are a lack of tangible outcomes, which is evident in your presentation, unless and until you're trying to school me more. Now, coming to the loss and damage funds, you know, according to you, you know, as the civil society, you are not least happy with it. And I don't think it's only you, but even the ordinary Africans. Because when we say loss and damages, these things need to be felt at the grassroots. People need to feel it. So those are my observations that I make to the presentation. Thank you.
Merci. Merci, honorable.
Thank you very much, honorable colleague. Honorable Esther.
Good morning. My name is Esther Basaris. I'm the representative for the Pan-African from Kenya. What I want to know is, you know, are we boycotting the next COP? I mean, I think we've been saying that as the continent of Africa, we will all take a position that if we're not going to get the loss and damage, they've created so many other funds, you're saying they're all empty. Are we still, I mean, I gather from your presentation is that we're planning on still going for future COPs, and we're thinking about future COPs. I mean, at the end of the day, if we keep going, we keep validating their lack of responsibility for the damage that they've caused to the continent of, and basically it's the global south, not just the continent of Africa. I felt that when we had the Africa Climate Summit, the whole intention was to bring a unified force of the entire continent together to speak with one voice and demand compensation for loss and damage. Now, right now, I mean, with what is going on in Kenya, it is because we are actually struggling with debt. We have no money to develop the country. There's been debt swaps for health. We've seen some debt swaps in some countries. I think if they don't want to put their money, the other way for us to deal with climate change and loss and damage is debt swap, or if we all collectively came up and said, you know what, if you don't want to, this is the figures. If we have the figures, if we've tabulated the figures, what each country is warranting in terms of, that's what I want to know. Do we have the figures? Can we say that Kenya is worth 8 trillion or 4 trillion in loss and damage for this period? Have we quantified the loss and damage in terms of money, or are we just hoping that there'll be this kitty that we can draw down from and continue? Do we have figures that are quantified for the entire continent of what is owed, not what is offered? Because if that is the case, then we can look at what is owed to Africa in loss and damage and justify the amount by calculation, and then at the same time, once we've done that, then we say, look, you owe us this much in loss and damage, we owe you this much in loans. All right, so we are going to demand a debt swap in the next 12 months or 6 months as an ultimatum. It's like we are continuing to plant trees and nobody is left out. You look at the whole world, the global north is also suffering the consequences, and they're depending on us and our low emissions to save, it would have been worse for them. So I just feel that as a continent, we need to basically be firm, not wait for them to. It's like we're begging. So I think we need to calculate the loss and damage value for each African country or each global south country, and then look at the debt, and we see, is the loss and damage equivalent to 30-40% of the debt, or maybe 100% of the debt? And then as Africa Union and any other organizations within the global south, they come together and say, by the next COP 29 or 30, we are basically going to abandon debt repayment. Because if we take that collective voice, then only will they take us seriously. I think right now it's like we're begging, we're waiting, we're hoping, we're praying, but we're not being firm. So as the group that you are, PACJA, are you also looking at ways to empower the global south with the figures? Do we have the figures? Do we have the figures that say Kenya is owed this much, Uganda is owed this much, South Africa is owed this much? Once you have those figures and you can justify them, then we can call for collective demands of debt swap if they don't want to put their money, and that would be worse for them than if they paid us gradually.
Merci, honorable. Honorable Yusuf.
Thank you. Honorable Yusuf, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. I would like to thank the presenter, Professor Motika, and I'm happy to hear to this and thank him for whatever presented and for all his effort with regard to the COP meetings or COP conferences. I don't like to speak long, but I want to confirm what my colleague Suleiman, I'm in this parliament, and I follow up the result of COP meetings since COP 24. And the last one, now we are waiting for COP 29. I noticed that still we are moving the same circle. We talk the same talk, we talk about same issues, and I think that Mr. America, I think we at Parliament or Africa or Etica, we have to have a statement explaining very clear points, written that speak about what we want as African countries. Pan-African Parliament, it is the only institution that we represent all the African countries. So we represent the African people So we know that all the countries participating in institutions or international institutions, for example, the International Parliamentarian Union, IPU, and there is African group, and also there is Arab group. When we talk to our colleagues in this meeting, they speak different way what we are seeing. So there is a clear indication that there is no coordination between all these countries, especially the African countries. So I would like to emphasize that, first of all, I spoke about this one. First of all, we have to have a very clear statement in the Pan-African Parliament. So we as members of the Pan-African are representing the African people. When we talk, we have to talk about the very clear points. This statement, as members of the Parliament, we can pass it through all the institutions, international institutions, so it will be a common African position. So I would like to confirm what has been said by my colleagues. So we have to have practical steps so as to be able to achieve some benefits from all these country meetings. Thank you.
Peut-être que...
So, let's give Dr. Mitika a chance to respond. The Executive Secretary for the Parliamentary Alliance for Climate Change, who is one of the partners we work with as the AU and the Parliament. Maybe that will give him the opportunity to give us a few answers to questions raised. So in the meantime, let's give Dr. Mitika the chance to respond.
The questions which have been asked, in fact, they are very good questions, and not a number of them are comments. So I'll start with the question number one, is about the small countries, how they can access money, how which way can they access this funding, and all the questions. If I understood the question, you know, my sense is that the funding on climate change is very complicated. A country like Lesotho belongs to many groups. It belongs to African Group of Negotiators. It is part of the least developed countries. And I know Lesotho has got arrangements, has got also bilateral engagement with different countries on their, based on their diplomatic relationships. And so there is no fund which is called a fund for a country like Lesotho. Even the one with the attempt which was meant to least developed countries fund, as I was saying, what happened is that we have all these funds, and that's why we were questioning about the loss and damage fund, because we were even citing the LDC fund. It was established with a lot of fanfare, because least developed countries thought that that would be a fund which will support them on their climate finance. But in fact, that one is the least refund fund, because no one wanted to put money there. It is actually even forgotten. And so, my advice to the LDC countries, it is only through these multilateral processes which really can give you leverage. If you want to deal, for instance, a bilateral relationship with Lesotho and China, because of the might of China in terms of finance, it is not going even to get anything from you, because they are powerful, and you are going to go to listen to what they are saying. That's why multilateralism is very important. And this brings me to the question which has been asked about, why do we go to this course? Is it a jamboree? Is it just tourism or something like that? Why do we go to these conferences? because in view, and this is not the question I'm hearing now, people are tired, but of course you need to understand that these international conferences and the multilateral process is quite tiresome. Many regions and the countries come there with their own interest, and we also go there to our interest. So it's a negotiation. A negotiation is a very tiring issue. It can take years, and it is very frustrating sometimes. But then, what other options? A country like Lesotho, a country, small African countries, poor countries, what options do you have? Even in the face of other bigger entities. If you want, we say, now we are not going, let us go and just engage individually. You will not even be noticed. And that's why we have African group of negotiators. We come together as Africa so that we can be visible, we can have a bigger voice against these bigger powers like US, EU, and those others. Remember, they can shape everything. But now we become powerful also when we come together, when we unite together. So to me, and in the position of PACJA actually, we have been telling our governments, yes, if we say that now we are going to boycott the course because they are not having any tangible outcomes, then what options do we have? And then we leave it as such. Then we are going even to be massacred more. I'm not talking about the massacre, that bloody massacre. I'm talking the political massacre and the economic massacre. We are going to be very vulnerable. So it is better. Our position has been that the cause are very important for us. Multilateralism is very important for weaker countries like ours. So the other point is about disappointing with the expectations. The committee, and yes, I understand, not only the committee, but remember, we had a very robust statement and recommendations and declaration in last year's when we hosted jointly, and all parliamentarians participated in the Pan-African Summit on climate policy and equity, which was addressed by the chair of CAOSC, Committee of Heads of States and Governments on Climate Change of the African Union, President Ruto of Kenya. You see, he elevated that and the demands of the CAP and demands of Pan-African parliamentarians. So there was a very clear statement by parliamentarians on what we want. But if we look at what we achieved, of course, we didn't achieve all what we wanted. If you look at that statement, there are some things which we achieved, others we did not achieve. But more importantly, what we really did not achieve is financing and adaptation. I agree with the frustrations, but in this being multilateral process, you are frustrated as I am, but what we do in this context, in this global context, where you have to navigate many interests. So I go also to the clear roadmap for global financial reforms. And President Ruto of Kenya now is in consultation with the African Union, and he is really driving that. Let's see how far it can go, but also it is not going to be very easy, an easy process. The World Bank right now is celebrating 80th birthday. From when it was established in 1940s, it was a bank of reconstruction of the damages after the World War II. Is that context really prevailing? Now that's why it is very punitive to Africa. So we need really it should be reformed as a bank, which is going to help and support development, not to kill development the way it is doing in Africa. Then the point, of the commitment, and that brings me the issue of commitment, whether we made very ambitious commitments, going back to drawing board about the money and everything. Let me tell you, no. I was mentioning that we had in this when the US in Dubai was making a commitment of all that money which is there. 17 million, it is actually the least. That is an insult. Within one swoop, the Congress of US approved 95 billion US dollars. Even could they even dedicate 1 billion to come to climate action on loss and damage? There is no political will. The US drives its own agenda. Right now, the agenda is causing war everywhere, is causing poverty everywhere. It is about their interest, and we should not rely. What we do is, you politicians, what we do with such people. So you can see it is not because of the insufficiency of money. Money is where there. Look at when the COVID-19 struck, because it was affecting them. Within record time, they were able to raise trillions and trillions of dollars for vaccine development and deployment. Within 3 months, we had the vaccines all over the world. But when we talk about climate change, because it is not affecting them as the way it is affecting Africans and the Black community, then it is not a priority. So we need to put pressure and keep praying that this thing affects them so that we can open their eyes the way we are. Let's go to the loss and damage. I think it is the same. We are not happy as civil society, same happy as legislators and all stakeholders. Because one, the money which was raised and which our governments, you know, our governments have a problem. They start celebrating. We were saying, we were telling them, we were being, this is a trap. They didn't hear. But after that was passed, even it was given the same World Bank to manage. Right now, we don't know where they have reached even. It will take around 5 years even to agree on the disbursement. You see, they were tricked. But more importantly is even money. That 700 million US dollars cannot even fund loss and damage of the damages which happened in Kenya just that season because of floods. We require billions of shillings. But now, because we are very poor, that money, one player, Ronaldo, who is in UAE, he is paid 300 million US dollars per year. So for just one player can pay loss and damage fund for 3 years. This is a fund which is a global fund. How many countries will get this? I leave that to you. So I said we should not boycott the COP, my sister, because it's going actually not going to favor us. However much it is going to frustrate us, the COP is the most important platform for us. We engage bilaterally to our disadvantage. You will never win against a power which is giving you money because you go for what they want because you are powerless and you want them. But we put pressure at global level, but again, we need to combine all these. And I want to also to agree, I have no comment about the, of course the ACS was very, categorical. The declaration is there, we celebrated, but how far have we gone? What I can say is that effort of mobilization is very important, and we should not be tired by mobilizing ourselves, keeping Africa in solidarity. That is the only way we can be stronger. We can amplify their voice, our voice. And this is very important. In terms of, we were talking about evidence, about the data which we have, how much we need. I think this is, I can get the organizations which have done studies on this, and I'm sure, even as we speak now, AFDB has done a lot of studies on that. There are even civil society organizations which have done to that. I can follow up with this to give you more. I don't have that data, but I can give. It is there. We need to argue on the basis of evidence. That is what we are going to be taken serious. But I can tell you that, of course, in Africa, we have a problem with that. We leave it to even the North to do those studies. But then we are trying to see how we can build that within the Climate for Development Africa program, together with the African Union and also the UN Economic Commission for Africa. We are doing a lot of analysis as we do now for all these things so that we can up ourselves with the data. We are not going to accept the debt swap. The debt swap are the traps for our money, but I don't want to mention that yes, and we take this money, just take it, after a while we say we are not paying, this is our climate debt, but we need to agree on that. But should be a conspiracy. This is between me and you. So Africa belongs to many groups, AGN, Arab group. How do we use those leverages to drive African agenda? But the primacy of African group of negotiators is very important. Before you go to Arab group, before you go to LDCs, before you go to G77, we have to know that we come from Africa first, strengthen ourselves, use that leverage to expand our influence in those groups. But we have seen a situation where some of our African colleagues go to these groups and forget the African group, and then weaken us because they divide our efforts, which is not very good. So I want to again to refer you to the statement, to the declaration last year. It is very fresh. Most of the issues are very fresh. And once I come, I'll be coming on that. We'll have further conversation where we are going to even discuss further on how to work together towards COP29 and COP30. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mithika. Do we have any? Please, you have the floor, sir.
Chair. Thank you, Doc, for a well-researched presentation. Doc, I just want to check with you. In Africa, how many countries so far are benefiting from carbon credits? You understand, I think you understand that the market size for carbon credits as of 2021, it was around 900 billion, that is for compliance, and 2 billion for voluntary. So I just want to know how many countries so far in Africa are benefiting from carbon credits. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much. For clarification, Dr. Mithika, the first person was not talking about Lesotho, but was talking about Eswatini. This was our colleague from Eswatini, just for clarification. Honorable Awatef, you have the floor.
أعضاء لجنة الفلاحة بالبرلمان الإفريقي. سيد الرئيس اليوم.
Thank you so much. I'm a member of this committee and I'm glad to be here. As you know, that the African continent is a continent that needs to have our voice heard. It's one of the continents that is the most affected by pollution. So we're here as MPs representing Africa, and we should defend Africa's interests. We are going to be looking at the issues concerning Africa and so forth. I would like to thank Dr. Mithika for his presentation. I just want to know, what are the modalities for selecting countries that will be benefiting from this climate aid? What is the responsibility of industrialized countries that are considered as the most polluting ones? So here today, we are discussing different matters and we're looking for ideal situations for climate challenges in Africa. And today, we see in European parliaments, at least the Francophone ones, there is a great deal of media coverage, much more than we have here. The media coverage here is not at the level we would like to see. So what we're doing here should clearly be in the media so that we can have our voices heard. It seems like we're just meeting in rooms and discussing such important matters, but we should have media coverage of our discussions. We need to make sure that our voices are heard a bit more than it already is. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Perhaps mine will also be a follow-up from what previous speakers have said. I'm looking at the carbon dioxide emissions. And if you look at the figures that we have, the most countries that have got more carbon emissions will be China, USA, and India. And if you look at the list of the countries that have got CO2 or carbon dioxide emissions,
problème. Allez-y.
Yeah, the least countries that are contributing to that will be your islands, your Fenecua, your Comoros, in terms of carbon dioxide emissions. The issues that we are trying to raise, Honorable Chair, is that we have a target of preventing the increase in temperature by 1.5 degrees up until 2050. And we don't seem to be getting there. And if you look at what has been talked about the loss and the damage that these countries want to contribute, I think the speaker was very elaborate on that to say, look, they are looking at the global issues of the war. We are targeting 100 billion USD. That's what the speaker said. And we don't seem to be getting there. We are now gearing up and gunning for the momentum to attend the COP29 and COP30 in Brazil. For what? It really remains to be seen. I hear the sentiments of our speaker in terms of us being there. But for what good purpose? We have put a lot of pressure on these things, and it doesn't seem to be working. Because USA, India, and China are still the main contributors. Eswatini is becoming barren now. We are seeing droughts that are unprecedented. Look at the issues of Durban in South Africa, of what happened about the droughts. We are seeing cases in Seychelles where they are losing, or the water is rising by a meter each year. And if we keep on going on this way, to say we need to go there and put pressure and pray that they do something, it doesn't work. And I don't see where countries, in particular PAP, is playing a significant role in terms of changing the mindset of our colleagues who are the main contributors in terms of the CO2 emissions as a mate.
Merci, Honorable.
Thank you so much, Honorable Member. If we don't have any other question, we're going to give the floor back to Dr. Mitika so that he can give us answers to the concerns raised. Dr. Mitika, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I think some of those are not questions, both of them are, I believe that both of them are but just to also respond to the comments, I believe that Africa is very strategic, particularly in the current geopolitical landscape, where there is emerging the north-south, the two axes, the BRICS and the BRICS axis now competing with the West. I think that is advantageous for Africa because you go into these countries, they are so difficult to even secure anything because they have monopoly of power. So I'm seeing an opportunity with the now emergence of the BRICS. We have an option. We tell them just during the Cold War, if you don't want us we are a bride. We can go to another bride. We can go to another suitor. And I think that's the tactics, the role of institutions like PAP. Let us be firm on these issues. I want to come to the question on the carbon markets. I will not, I cannot, we don't work on carbon markets, we oppose it because we have never seen where it has worked. Where it is in Africa, like in Zimbabwe, you have heard about the initiative, which is already is very controversial. In a country like Gabon, this was even the cost of the fall of the former president. Because now these guys come, they are like cowboys. You are hearing now, my friend is mentioning billions of US dollars. Those are things in the air. You don't see them translated on the ground. So, and that's why in just in a year, by next year, I mean in next July, we have a meeting purely on carbon markets. Because no one understands this, and it is a very big issue because our government thinks that there is a lot of money in carbon markets, but there are a lot of fraudulent things. The global corporations are using it to fleece Africans, to appropriate lands. Millions and millions of our land have been given away by our governments. We don't know how it is operating. And so, last week, we had a technical committee with the African Union with very high level and expert people with high experts to ensure that we package for you, including you guys, you parliamentarians, so that you can understand this carbon markets. This is going to be followed in July by a conference on carbon markets in Addis Ababa, hosted by the African Union, where we are going now to come up so that we answer the questions which you are asking. Really, what does it, what is carbon markets? Just basic principles. What are the principles? How are they? Let it not come as another colonialism altogether. So I will fight for you, for this committee, to participate in that conference, because I don't want really I want you to be part of this really co-creation, so that when you come and when you are discussing, you discuss on the position of awareness, of understanding. Because it is very difficult for people. People are not understanding. The Western guys, cowboys, come with these big numbers, the metrics, some even how they are calculated, it will not know and tell you this is the carbon we are buying. But when they buy in $5 in a carbon, a ton of carbon equivalent, they go, you hear they are selling it at $100. So why is our carbon coming in Africa? It is very cheap. It's $5, whereas it goes to there, it becomes now those billions. They are making the millions again. The other question I ask people, so that you guys, and you need really to be on top of things on these carbon markets, is if we have coffee in Africa, we have cocoa in West Africa, we have our resources, we have our resources team, rubber, and those others. If you cannot control the price of those commodities, how are you going to control something you cannot see? Somebody is coming and telling you this is carbon market, and you are just falling into the trap. Let us really understand it. I'm not going to give the numbers now. I don't know. I'm not aware of the countries, because some of these things are actually being done in secrecy. You can't understand what is happening. It's a scramble. We need really to clarify. This is going to be done in July in Addis Ababa. Going to the other point is African continent. Of course, we are mostly affected. And I believe that while we as PACJA have been very passionate and working with the PAP for the past 10 years, no more than 10 years, is we believe that the voice of parliamentarians is very important. No other organization has been consistent with the PAP like PACJA. it is because we believe, as what my colleague, my friend, my MP has said, that African parliamentarians are the voice of people and they should protect the interest of Africa. We want PAP to wake up. You woke up last year and that declaration was actually shaped Africa. Let us be doing those things rather than staying inside. And this again, I agree about the whoever is benefiting. I believe we are not benefiting. We also issue of the media. I agree with you, but really we are trying our best. But our media, when we have a big conference right now, Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice in Kenya, I've not seen anything in the media. But now, the sensational issues of people, images of people, I've seen it up to New York Times, up to BBC. They will never cover these positive things which we are doing with the universities. We have hosted more than 50 countries, 80 countries as we speak now. That's why I was not able to come there physically. But are they covering this? CNN comes from just from far from US to cover people killing each other. Sensational issues, negative coverage. And we develop our own media. How far are we going to go to do? This is very important. I agree with you, but we are making progress. The final point is about the carbon dioxide emissions, the carbon emissions. True, China is the biggest current emitter. US is the largest historic emitter, and India. What do you see in the three countries? They are the largest economies. So there is the proportional relationship between development and emissions, greenhouse emissions. Because the more you develop, the more you emit. The more you have industries, the more you emit. So if you look into Africa, we are underdeveloped. And if you look at Africa, South Africa is the most developed, and that's why you can see it is the biggest emitter. So, because now these countries, the way the climate change conventions is designed, you realize that most projects go to India, China, and those other big economies, Brazil, because it is mitigation. Mitigation is about electricity. It's about solar power. It's about wind power. It's about hydropower, all renewables. They are going to these electric cars because they can make business sense. So turning climate into business. So if you cannot reach that, if you have no business, there is no business which can be derived from small countries, you will remain that way. That's why we are saying we want climate finance on adaptation, because we need to push this, we need to adapt, we need to build resilience. Thank you very much once again.
Merci, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitika. And as I said previously, please do share your presentation with us through Mr. Galal Ali so that he can share it with us. As partners, we have the possibility of organizing before the different COPs for the Agriculture Committee capacity building meeting. Galal will remain in contact with you so that we can see to what extent these capacity building sessions can be set up. And I would also like to request that you tell us a little bit about the model law on climate change, because the resolution that enabled us to begin the process of drafting this model law was validated on the 1st of June 2023. And we would like to know, since I understood that you didn't really have anything to present to us, but please do tell us where the process has reached with regards to the drafting of this model law. Thank you.
Docteur, est-ce que vous nous entendez?
Dr. Mitika, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Dr. Mitika? Dr. Mitika?
Est-ce que vous êtes là? Est-ce que vous êtes avec...
Are you there, Dr. Mitika? Can you hear us? I think there's a connectivity issue, and so we are going to share that. I think this morning I was told that we were supposed to have an update on the draft model law on climate change, and I was told that the process is still ongoing, and therefore Dr. Mitika did not really have anything to present. But we just wanted to know where the process had reached, but we have lost him. And I also asked the issue on capacity building, because before the different COPs, we often have with PACJA capacity building sessions. And so we're going to ask Dr. Gala to pass these questions on to Dr. Mitika. We're going to have another presentation on the draft model law on
10 minutes.
soil management. So we are going to have it in 10 minutes. And so we're going to have a 7 minutes break and then we come back. Thank you.
chers collègues qui sont toujours... Peut-être on va essayer de commencer.
Professor Oliver from Stellenbosch University. Are you online? Prof, are you online?
Online. Can you hear me?
Oui, on vous entend très bien.
Loud and clear.
Donc, bonjour.
So you're going to tell us the progress being made on the model law on soil management in Africa. Are we right?
Okay, si vous êtes prêts, vous...
Very well. If you're ready, please get going.
Okay. Thank you very much. And good morning, dear delegates. Good morning, Chair. Thank you for inviting me here today to give you a brief progress report on the implementation of the project of the soil management model law for Africa. First of all, I would like to mention that I'm giving this feedback on behalf of all the partners that are involved in the project. This is a project under the cooperation of the Pan-African Parliament, the German Environment Agency, funding by the German Ministry for Development Cooperation, with the diplomatic support of the Food and Agricultural Organization in Rome, with the diplomatic support of the United Nations Environment Program in Nairobi, in Kenya, and with the diplomatic endorsement of the African Ministers' Conference for the Environment, that is AMSEN. So with the support of this structure, we are currently busy to draft the model law for soil management in Africa. Since our last feedback to the Pan-African Parliament, we have made significant progress in the sense that we have consolidated our model law drafting team, which currently consists of members from Kenya, from Botswana, from Madagascar, from Zambia, from Morocco, from Cameroon, from Burkina Faso, from Ghana, from Mozambique, from Namibia, and from South Africa. This is the model law drafting team that is currently busy investigating the state of affairs of model legislation in the 54 African member countries in order to come up with a consolidated draft of model legislation that can be put before the Pan-African Parliament for further negotiation. We are currently in the middle phase of our project, meaning that it is anticipated that by the end of this year, we will probably have a first draft of the model law available. This will be a rough draft, again for consultation, but we hope that at the beginning of 2025, we will be able to put this draft before your eyes and for your consideration, so that we can have a close exchange with your House with regards to the content and the design of the model law. Until then, we also hope to have a further clarity on the final steps of implementation, and we envisage to have this project finalized according to plan, according to the project proposal by the end of 2025. It is a challenging process. We are attempting to make as much public appearance with this project as possible, with government officials, with ministries, with stakeholders of all walks of life in the different member countries. Such, for instance, we had meetings over the past 8 months in Casablanca, in Morocco, in Gaborone, in Botswana, Kenya, Nairobi, in Lusaka, in Zambia, and we are going to meet with the whole project team in about 2 weeks' time in Dakar, Senegal, and we also envisage to get high-level support from the government of Senegal for this meeting. To encapsulate it in short, it is a challenging project. We are putting our best efforts into it. I am optimistic that we will come up with a considerate draft model that will then, of course, be subject to controversial discussion. And we will rely on your geographic proximity and on your feedback once we can put it before you. Until then, we will filter out all the good practices that we have come across so far. We receive great support from the World Food and Agricultural Organization. We receive great support from the United Nations Environment Program, and we envisage to also tie in the African Ministers of Environment Conference in September of this year. We're meeting with them, hopefully in person in Côte d'Ivoire, to consult them, to give us their input, and also to respond to some of our specific questions that we may also put before you in the meantime, if you have time to give us a little bit of feedback from your experience that can flow into the outcomes of our project. I do understand that my feedback is relatively open, but I would like to terminate here, giving you the assurance that the progress that we are making is in full expectation of where we stand, where we want to stand at the moment, and that we envisage the outcome to become a true success. It is also monitored from outside the African continent, and I think that if we will really manage to implement this model law at one stage, this may have spillover effects to other continents that are looking closely in what we are doing in order to implement this challenging project. I thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you, Professor Oliver. And to remind my colleagues, Professor Oliver is going to confirm or otherwise that 8 countries are covered by the study, this pilot study, because we can't deal with all the countries. There's Zambia, Cameroon, Kenya, which was in the first part of this exercise. Added were Ghana, Morocco, Mozambique. So these 8 countries are going to serve as the guinea pigs for this study. And Professor has informed us that they are halfway through the preparation of the document on model law. It is a document from which we're going to draft that model law. The first draft is going to be available in 2024. And he tells us therefore, so at the beginning of 2025, it's going to be ready. That's what I jotted down, having listened. Very well. So the final document is going to be ready towards the end of 2025. And in that regard, I know that the private sector and the government have also been consulted.
That brief rundown. I have a question for you. You said you'll be visiting to Senegal soon.
Yes.
If that is the case, is it not prudent to also invite Gambians? Yeah, because it's a neighbor to Senegal. You know, though small, but you can also get some support because we want, countries to be committed, governments to be committed. I don't know, your visit to Senegal, is it to the government or to other partners? So if it is to government, would it not be ideal to invite Gambia government also to participate?
May I respond, Chair, or would you like to collect several questions first?
Voilà. On va prendre d'autres questions.
Well, let's, I think, listen to a number of questions before you are given the license to respond.
سيد الرئيس حبيت نسأل الدكتور بروفيسور لماذا
So, from North Africa, and we are, I think, the region that has been the most impacted by this issue. Any other speakers wishing to take the floor? Well, Professor, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the questions, delegates. Of course, we would be very much interested to invite members from the region, also, of course, from the Gambia. Let me just reiterate briefly what the purpose of our project meeting in Senegal is, so that perhaps you understand the context and also, unfortunately, the financial limitations involved. So our project meeting is going to be in Dakar for 1 week. We will have the whole project writing team coming to Dakar. It is a working meeting where we'll write and we'll draft the passages of the model law on the basis of reports that we have received and analyzed in the meantime. So this meeting is relatively technical in nature. It is not an outreach meeting like we had in other countries, like in Morocco earlier or in Kenya. It is really a roll sleeves up meeting, sit down, technically drafting the provisions of the model law. In that regard, we will have limited exchange to government officials this time, and I don't foresee to invite now people from the region. We have contemplated to do so, but unfortunately we also have some financial constraints to face in terms of travel money, and we have decided to utilize the time in Senegal to really to work hard on the provisions, to work hard on the technicalities, and on the side to use the time, have exchange with some stakeholders in Dakar, and also with some local government officials from Senegal, where there is a low-cost involvement, of course, that we foresee. In that light, I must regret to inform that Gambia will not be on the books this time, but what we definitely plan to do is, when we meet with the African Ministers of the Environment later in Cote d'Ivoire in September, hopefully, to have very, very intense exchange with them, and hopefully also with a representative from Gambia, who was initially very also supportive of our project, that I know, and that perhaps we can make good utilizing the forum of this meeting to engage with representatives from the region. Bringing me to the next question from the delegate from Northern Africa, which is, of course, a critical region for us to address in this project, and with Morocco as our spearheading partner in North Africa, we have attempted to have further exchange with other countries in the region, and for that purpose we will manage, hopefully in October, to have a consultation meeting which will take place in Morocco, which will, however, invite experts from other countries in North Africa to this meeting, in order to tap on them, in order to involve them in the discussion, in order to give real meaning to their inputs, because, of course, North Africa is a critical region for the success of this region. And I think this is also underlined by the strong support that we have so far received from the Moroccan government in this respect.
Thank you so much, Prof. Do we have any other requests to take the floor? Or if we do not have anyone requesting to take the floor, we are going to release our dear Professor Olivier, that we thank in passing so much for this presentation regarding the draft law on soil management in Africa. We'd like to wish you all success in your work and see you soon, sir. Thank you so much.
Madam, thank you, Chair. Thank you, delegates. It's a great honor and privilege to speak before you, and you can rely on our continued efforts to make this project a true success in the spirit of Africa and under the leadership of the Pan-African Parliament. I thank you, and I remain at your availability.
Merci donc.
Thank you so much. We are going to then release you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, we just want to take you through the program that we are going to embark on tomorrow. We have, it's going to be a panel discussion by 9 o'clock, from 9 o'clock to 9:30. The opening is 9.
Yeah, 9.
9. Okay. The opening is going to be 9 o'clock in the morning. So it will be at the plenary. At the plenary, at the chambers. So the chair of the committee, the acting chair, will give the welcoming remarks. The opening remarks, 25 minutes, will be done by Dr. Abibi Heli Gabriel, FAO or FAO, Assistant Director General and Regional Representative. Mrs. Hestari Fatabong, Director for Agriculture, Food Security, Environmental Sustainability and Climate Change. Lydia Kumia, Deputy Director, African Union Global Office, WFP. Dr. Mitika Wenda, Executive Director of PACJA, the one who made the presentation. His Excellency Honorable Chief Chorombira, the President of Pan-African Parliament. So the main session will be moderated by myself, Honorable Suleiman Saho, Rapporteur of the PAP Committee on Agriculture. So the presentation from 9:30 to 10:30, presentation of the model laws on food nutrition. 10 minutes, Mr. Clement Mavugu, Legal Officer PAP. The panel discussion, domestication and popularization of the model law. That's going to be, the presenters are as follows: Honorable Esther Passaris, PAP Committee, she is the one with us here. Ms. Kiselin Sistresta, Legal Officer FAO. Lydia Kome, Deputy Director of African Union Global Office, WFP, and Mrs. Hestari Fatabong, Director of Agriculture, Food Security, Environmental Sustainability and Climate Change. The fifth one is Mr. Clement Mavugu, Legal Officer, PAP. Official launch of the model law, unveiling an official launch of the model law. Hechi, the President of PAP, Chair of the PAP Committee, Agriculture. The closing moderator, the Chair Committee on Agriculture. Closing remarks and vote of thanks by the Bureau, PAP. Closing ceremony, presentation of video, montage, networking and refreshment break. PAP Secretariat. Thank you.
Est-ce qu'il y a
Do we have any other business?
So let's be there.
tous les membres de la
So all the members of the committee, the Rural and Agricultural Committee, are invited to this draft model law session on food security. Do we have any other business?
Ok, donc s'il n'y a pas...
Right. If we don't have any other business, we are going to adjourn this session. Thank you so much to our interpreters. Thank you also to our secretariat. And thank you to you all, dear members, for coming and participating in great numbers. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you and have a lovely day.